the Developing the Evidence-Enriched Practice Program. So I'll make a start. We're going to find that. Share, slideshow. Oh, to move all these bars to slideshow from begin. So it's called From Metrics to Meaning, Storytelling Approaches to Learning, Focused Evaluation and Development. And it's based on that title. I pinched the title, so I didn't come up with it, but there's a paper on relational approaches to health service delivery, really. It's a lovely paper. If anybody's interested in it, it says, when you take a relational responsive approach, you often get better outcomes than when everything's driven by performance and data. So can you see that all? That's all clear?
Yep.
Basically, it's a workshop in two parts. The first bit I want to do is look at the value of stories and how to gather them, and just through two particular methods. And then after the break, we'll just look at learning together through talking about stories. It's one thing to gather stories and be moved by them, but it's much more important that we actually engage with them and do something, think and act differently. So it's in those two. I've divided it up into those two sort of sections, really. First one is deep, and I did do this, as Jim says, a presentation a while ago on this, but basically it's a relational co-production approach to gathering, exploring, and using diverse types of evidence in learning and development using story and dialogue methods. So you can see very much co-production, and our motto is the quote from the Mabinogion, which is a Welsh text, "Avo ben byd bont," you would be a leader, should be a bridge. We're about building bridges between people, research, policy, and practice. So that's what deep is. And it does resonate with human learning systems. In the conversations I've had with the human learning systems folk, deep has some of the methods which help human learning systems work, really. It's a much higher level thing, human learning systems, but some of the little practical methods I'm going to share with you today can be used to support a human learning systems approach. So there's two storytelling methods that can do that, and I wanted to, and I'm sort of weaving them together, really. One is stories of experience, and we call it magic tragic moments. And another methodology is looking at stories of change outcomes. So it's definitely focused on change rather than experience, and that's called most significant change. And I'm sort of dabbling in a bit of both, really. We'll talk about story gathering from both and how we learn from the stories. But they're very simple methodologies. I say simple, but not simplistic. They can be quite profound when they're applied well. But before we do that, I just wanted a little song, if that's okay. I've got to stop sharing because I don't think I allowed for sound, did I? So if I share sound, I show my age with this song. Because I say to people, do you remember when I do with social issues, nobody's ever heard the song. It's one I was brought up on, so I'm hoping at least somebody there will know this song. Okay, so.
Blow me a kiss from across the room. Say I look nice when I'm not. And touch my hair as you pass my chair. Little things mean a lot. Give me your arm as we cross the street. Call me at 6 on the dot. Oh, what a day when you're far away. Little things mean a lot. You don't have to buy me diamonds and pearls, champagne, sables and such. I never cared much for diamonds and pearls, 'cause honestly, honey, they just cost money. Give me your hand when I'm lost away. Give me your heart to rely on. Whether the day is bright or grey, give me your shoulder to cry on.
We just thought a bit of a warm-up exercise. Whether can we break into little threes or pairs, Jim? Is that possible? Well, welcome back, everyone. Yeah. So we're all able to share, aren't we, little things that mean a lot. But I want to sort of press on the slides and you'll see why I've sort of raised that, why I shared the tongue in the first place, really. So go back to sharing. But there's a little thing, this theme, and little things mean a lot. There's a research message in one project I was involved with Joseph Rowntree Foundation. And it was the A Better Life program. It's what matters most to older people with high support needs. And this little research finding was sort of shared. Often it's the simple things that bring the most pleasure, and the lack of them can bring a sense of sadness and loss, and services do not always seem to be very good at delivering the ordinary. So there's a bit of research for you. But in terms of getting that research into practice, you can say that to people, but it just tends to go in one ear and out the other. People say, well, I know little things mean a lot. Yeah, we know that. And it's like it doesn't really sort of take hold of people. But when you bring it to life through story, you get a different reaction, really. So this person in the picture is Carol, who's living in a nursing home in Monmouth, and she saw this research message, and she said, I've got a story about that, Nick. And she said, I'm living in this nursing home and I'm just existing. She said, when I was living in Abergavenny in the community, I felt I had a life. She said I was disabled then and I couldn't do a lot, but on a Friday I'd get a taxi and it would take me down to Waitrose. I'd treat myself to a Hester Blumenthal prawn cocktail. It was my little Friday treat. And she says, now I'm in the nursing home, I don't get the prawn cocktail. So this is powerful, isn't it? It's the same thing as the research message, but it's got much more power to it. And of course, we shared this story with the staff in the nursing home. They go, oh no, we didn't know she liked prawn cocktail. And then they get about sorting it out and finding a solution, and they end up getting her a mini fridge. She pays for it, but it's fine. They get her this mini fridge, and she has a prawn cocktail on a Friday, roll of desserts on a Tuesday, and a bit of prosecco and a post cheese at the weekend. So it's a little thing, but the research message came onto life through the story. The staff weren't particularly interested in the research message, but they were interested in the story, and that's part of the power of storytelling. And Terry Pratchett, sort of the author, I love this line by him. He says, if we really want people to engage with evidence and in a learning and shifting the way they think and act, then stories are the most powerful way to do that. This quote from him: people think that stories are shaped by people. In fact, it's the other way around. So if you want to influence people, shape people's thinking, tell them a story, because human beings are hardwired for story. And I love this quote by Jonathan Gotter: we're a species addicted to story. Even when the body goes to sleep, the mind stays up all night telling itself stories. So we are storytelling animals, really. So why aren't we using more story in learning and development? And the key to storytelling, the academics in Cambridge University have been working with us say, is it's because it engages the mind as well as the emotions, really. And all good learning should affect the head and the heart. So educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And so much of the stuff we do in terms of research recommendations or evidence stuff, it's very cerebral. It doesn't touch the heart, and then we wonder why people don't engage with it. So this, stories aren't just nice things; they're really powerful things. The way human beings interact. The other thing is, stories embrace complexity and they contain the whole. So one of the things I'm not particularly a fan of, and I put my foot in the other day. I said I'm not a fan of the outcome stars, and in this workshop was the person who designed the outcome stars, which was great. We had a nice long conversation afterwards. But I said, I'm not mad on them, because what you do is you take someone's life, which is really rich and complex and tragic, and you reduce it to these sort of components like self-care, living skills, social networks, work relationships. And you try to boil down someone's life to a set of numbers. Where are you on your relationships, Lillian, today? Are you a 3 or a 5? And it's just, then you go 3, and then you do something, and then you come back and you go, oh, you're 5, and then you attribute it and say, that's all because of what I've done. And it generates numbers, but it can be meaningless, really, if they're badly used, really. And it's a bit like the Bayer Tapestry. Here's a story here. You can see Harold with the arrow in his eye, and there's stuff going on, and you can make sense of the tapestry if you'd be to see it. But if you pull all of the threads out of the tapestry, you just end up with various shades of brown, really. And that's the real danger in reductionist approaches to evaluation, that they take someone's life, which is rich, complex, and then they try to boil it down to sort of component parts. And stories don't do that. Stories contain the whole. And that's what we found, whether they're organizational stories or in personal stories, the whole, people make sense of them through seeing them as a whole, really. You can't separate out all the individual outcomes. The other thing about stories is they connect with people and their reality, really. And Paulo Freire, the great sort of educationalist, this lovely quote by him: "We cannot do anything if we don't respect the people. We cannot educate if we don't start," and I said start, not stay, from the levels in which the people perceive themselves, their relationships with others, and with reality. Because this is precisely what makes their knowledge. One of the tasks of the educator is to provoke the discovering of need for knowing, and never to impose the knowledge whose need was not yet perceived. It's a bit wordy, but you see what he's saying is you don't force knowledge on people. You create an environment where they take an interest, and then they can connect to what you're sharing with them, and then they'll pull it into their frame of reference, really. And they'll take the lead. And it's constructivist learning, and stories are good like that because people's stories are their reality. So if you can connect our stories together, whether hearing somebody else's story triggers your own story, then we can connect and everything, and we can learn. So, stories are really powerful. They're not just nice, fanciful things. So I wanted to share a quick story, if that's all right. Stop sharing. I wanted to share a story, the most significant change story. Now, this is from social work with parents who've had the kids taken off them in Neath Put Toll, but they were really brutal, really, and they were the worst local authority in Wales for taking children off families and causing a lot of harm in the process. I mean, obviously some safeguarding, but there was a lot of harm caused too, and a lot of money was spent as well. They've reduced the number of kids they take into care by half, really, and they've been doing it by working more positively with parents. And one of the things they've done is they set up parent cafes, and where social workers sit around with parents and they talk, and they use the David Tobis model from New York, which is around sharing the personal as well as the professional and building one another up rather than knocking each other down. And they've set up a parent advocacy group so parents come together and support one another. So the story I want to share with you, just to show you the complexity, is Gemma's story. She's a parent who would eat social workers for breakfast. So if you went to her with an evaluation form or an outcome star, she'd tell you where to put it, really. But with the storytelling method, you invite her to share her story. And as you'll see from the story, it'd be crude to try and put Gemma's story into an outcome star, really. You've got to hear her story, and then you straight away get the impact of what being part of this parent advocacy network has been all about. Is that okay? So I'm going to share Gemma's story with you, if that's okay. So I'm gonna... Does that come up? Does that come up, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, so please be continued, Gemma's story. Please tell me a bit about your background and how you came to be involved with the Parent Advocacy Network. Well, it starts where my kids went into care. There were many social workers over my life who found it very difficult to work with me. I don't blame them. I weren't in the best of places. I had this one social worker, Manya. It was a totally different experience. And she said, look, with everything else going on, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not intimidated. She told me straight, you're a very passionate woman that comes across a bit gobby. And I think what you've experienced will help a lot of people. And I'm thinking, have you seen my record? Have you seen what I do and why people can't work with me? And now you're going to make me help people. And it turned out to be the best thing ever. I went to Pan, and yet nearly 3 years now, it can't be that long, surely, yet 3 years, and it's changed my life. Thinking back over the last 12 months, what good or bad changes have come about as a result of your involvement in PAN? Well, the bad change is that I'm quiet, to take that as it is. But on the positive side, seeing others, parents like I was, in pain, needing help, screaming, acting differently, acting like I don't need your help, social worker. You're just here to do this, that, or the other. I'm actually changing my perspective. Before, I'd want to go up to the parents and say, you're right. They social workers can't be trusted. You're right. But now I'm saying the complete opposite. And not through forcing myself. I'm genuinely honest 110% of the time. And I say, if you work with them, it'll get better. And it does. Being involved with PAN uplifts me, and it puts a knot in my stomach at the same time, because all of the years I've proper put it into my head and promised myself that I'm never going to let social workers hurt people again. I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to do that. And now I'm helping families, which is kind of the same thing. But the result is just, well, there's no word there is to describe how fantastic it is to see these parents shine. Of all the changes, Which has been the most significant to you and why? My patience and thinking before it, my gob. Definitely, it serves me a lot better than being defensive and stroppy. Regarding the most significant change, please can you tell me a bit about what it was like before, what's it like now, and what caused the change? I was angry, I was hurt, I was confused, I was blaming everyone, not taking any kind of acknowledgement of, stuff that I could have changed, what I could have done. And it was just everybody else's fault and being stuck, and it was horrible. But now I'm starting to see me for me, not Gemma, just the name, just me as a whole human and a person. I can come up to Anna or Fiona, the social workers, and go, look, what you're saying is great, but I just want to hit you right now because you're still a social worker. And I'm still having these feelings of, oh, she's not going to listen to me. What's the point? Just give up. And it's not the case. It's not the case. I can actually go, look, it's not you, darling, but sometimes I do see you as your job, and I'm going to have trauma triggers off right then. I'm going to go to that Fiona instead of that Fiona when it shouldn't be the case. And that's what's changing for me now. It's actually learning to trust no matter what. And yeah, it's getting there. And what I think about now is I'm not being scared anymore. I'm accepting my flaws. I'm accepting me as me. And I'm not scared to tell people. I can go home and relax my own kind of way and do this with my kids and parent them my way without being judged. I'm getting support through PAN. None of this happened before PAN ever in all the years I've had experience of social services or whatever. This is changing, and it's changing me. I know full well it's going to change everyone else, and it's a story to be continued. That's amazing story. What do you make of that? It's powerful stuff, isn't it? Yeah. And of course, what we did is we most significant change. I'll go on to it later. Those stories are shared with a story selection panel, which involves the senior managers and they hear the stories and then they have to get in dialogue. But they're dynamite, really, when people hear stories. And often directors of social services get taken away from the front line and they're just interested in the numbers and metrics. But when they start to hear the story, they really engage with what's really meaningful in the work they do. And they're spending a little bit of money on supporting a parent cafe has turned out to be a really good way of spending your money. So that's just an example of the power of stories. And again, you couldn't put that into an outcome star, could you? What about a social relationships? Are there a 4 now or a 5? It's just crude, isn't it? Yeah, so that's why we think stories are really powerful. I'll press on, is that okay? But what I wanted to focus on before the break is the stories of experience, particularly what we call tragic magic moments, really. And this is a lovely Irish poet, Padraig Ó Tuama. I don't know if people know Padraig's work, but this lovely quote from him: "What is it about what it means to be human that can be discovered in the small moments of the everyday? Because often I think something larger lurks within that." So this is going back to those little things. The little things mean a lot because magic tragic moments is often focusing on the little experiences that people have that decide whether a service is of a quality service or a bad service, really. Are they magic moments or tragic moments? And I wanted to start with a story. This is a parent carer of 2 kids with a degenerative neurological condition. So this parent, Georgie, her name is, she has loads of professionals going in to see her kids from across health, social care, housing. And I just want you to listen to her magic moment story. She shared a story of experience. And going back to Parry's, what's the something larger in this little story? So here's a magic moment she shared. We get visited by loads of different professionals and it can be overwhelming. But if we're in trouble or need help, the first person we go to is the physiotherapist. And I'll tell you why. One day during a visit by him, he reached out into his bag to grab a pen, but he pulled out a toothbrush. He looked a little embarrassed and explained that he was rushing to get out of his house that morning as he likes to go to the gym before work. He didn't have time to brush his teeth at home, so he took his toothbrush with him. In sharing this story with us, we had a window into his world, and it made him more human to us than some of the other professionals who visit us. He is now our go-to person when we are in need. It's a little story, isn't it? It's a sweet little story, but what's it saying? What's going on in that? Anybody want to? It's quite a profound little story, isn't it? What sort of messages? What's it conveying? Anybody want to chip in?
The human touch, isn't it? It's kind of humanizing the services.
It is, isn't it? And it's a little thing, but toothbrush made a big difference to Georgie. She had all these assessments and procedures and protocols and grab rails and I don't know what, but it was the toothbrush which enabled her to open up to. Yeah. So you see, so the little stories, as Parry says, has got like can have profound meaning to them, and that's part of the spirit of magic tragic moments. So go on a bit. You're going to get you to share some of your own in a minute now. So that was a magic moment. I want to share you a tragic moment. So this is a sort of sad moment, and it comes from the work of Glenn Robert in King's College in London, who's the founder behind a thing called experience-based co-design, which is what we base magic tragic moments on, really. Because what Glenn says is we're mad in health services and social care around care pathways. I don't know if it's the same in Ireland. It probably is. You know, you design a care pathway and you think it looks great on paper. The patient comes in here, they go there, they come out here, and it looks beautiful. And he says the most perfectly designed treatment pathway in the world can still be a disaster from an experience point of view. So he says it isn't what it looks like on paper. It can be a care and support plan as well. It's how it feels like in experience. And what he says is in everyday experiences, whether it's a practitioner or somebody they work with or somebody supported by services, there'll be lots of boring stuff, but there'll be highs and lows. So a patient in hospital, there'll be lots of humdrum stuff, but there'll be things that made them feel good and things that made them feel bad. And he calls these emotional touch points. And he says those are the things that tell you about quality, and those are the things we can learn from. So and we can learn things from these little stories more than we can from a satisfaction survey, because the satisfaction surveys just tell you whether 70% of people are satisfied with their care. Well, you can't do anything with that, but I suppose it's something you can say 70% of our people are happy, but you can't do anything with it. So he gives the example of the red line in the head and neck cancer clinic. So this is a head and neck cancer clinic, reception desk, a red line that you stay behind for confidentiality, you know, for the patient. So it's a good thing, isn't it? It makes sense. But this little red line, when you actually get people's experiences, was a negative emotional touch point for a lot of people. It was a tragic moment. And I ask you now to guess and speculate why the red line was a negative. Why did people have a bad experience about the red line? What was it about the red line? Does anybody want to guess?
It's a boundary being
Yeah, it could be a
on
boundary,
someone.
couldn't it? Yeah, it could be like that's it's on. Yeah, it can be, especially as it's red. Perhaps if it was green, it might be better. But it wasn't that though. But it could be. You see, it could be that you're crossing the Rubicon. You know, once I cross that line, I'm into the world of treatment, and that's a scary place. And so we can speculate until the cows come home, but only the patients can tell you why it was a negative experience. And what it is in this case, it was new patients to the head and neck cancer clinic. So they were quite distracted. It's a head and neck cancer clinic, so they're obviously worried. And they don't see the red line. They walk straight past it. And they go to the reception desk, and the receptionist says, "Oh, sorry, do you mind waiting behind the red line?" And they go, "Oh, yes, sorry. Oh, I didn't see the red line." And they go back and they sit and they're embarrassed. And it's just sets them off on the wrong foot for the thing. And when you actually sat behind the red line, the researchers found you could hear everything that was going on at the reception desk. So it wasn't serving any kind of. They went to the managers in the hospital and they said, "What's with the red line?" And the manager said, "We didn't know there was a red line." So it's like, so basically they got rid of the red line. So it's a really simple story, but that's what Magic Tragedy is about. It's gathering people's experiences that are positive and negative from staff and from patients, and then talking about it and saying, well, how can we have more magic moments? How can we have less tragic moments? It's really simple methodology, but that in a nutshell is it. So we're going to do a little exercise in a minute, if that's okay. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Yeah. So the other thing about magic moments, these positive things, this is something I found very common in Wales, is there are lots of magic moments go on in services, and they're often not the things that are in care plans. So whether it's care homes or day services, or there's stuff happens on the day, and there's spontaneous little lovely human connections and things that are lovely. And what the staff have been saying to us in some of these services, they say when the regulators come in, the inspectors, they don't see them. They walk past these magic moments, and they go into the office and say, "When was the care plan last updated?" They look at the bureaucracy, and they miss the magic moments of human contact. So there's something around these magic moments can really illustrate quality of service. And one of the things that we also found, magic moments are often what we call they often capture practice that's almost hidden. We call it undercover kindness. So it's where social workers or support workers have done something in the moment that's spontaneous and lovely and the right thing to do, but it's not in a care plan. And in fact, they're a bit embarrassed about it. They don't share it because it's not written in the care plan. They might get told off. So we have this idea that staff are trained to be outcome focused in their way of working. But when they do something creative and outcome focused, they hide it because it's not something that was written down by a social worker 6 months ago in a care plan. Do you know what I'm saying? And we think that's really sad. So we think if these little stories need to be put into shine a light on them, really, because they're lovely. And I want to share one. It was a home care worker in Gwynedd, up in Porthmadog, and she was a young carer. And she was we talked about your magic moments. What are your positive moments? Tell us some stories about your experience of work. And she was very shy, really. I didn't want to say anything. And eventually, when she heard other people share their magic moments, she said, well, I have got a magic moment. And this is it. She said, I was providing care to an older lady and had noticed that she had a lot of cross-stitch samplers on her walls. One day when I visited her, I noticed that my uniform was coming apart, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind lending me a needle and thread to fix it. Her eyes lit up, and she said she'd be pleased to mend it for me. I handed her the uniform, and in no time it was as good as new. As soon as she'd finished it, she asked me if any of my colleagues had any mending jobs too. I now look out for anything she can mend for me and others. It's a lovely story, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's going on in that story? What's it telling us? What's the bit larger thing that's lurking in that little story?
Suppose it's people having a purpose, Nick, as well, isn't it? And
Yeah.
kind of some kind of an old-fashioned word, usefulness in
Yeah.
other people's lives. And, there's some kind of layering in, I don't know, of benefit to each other, I suppose.
It's mutual, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it's so important, and yet so many staff feel they can't do mutual things because of professional boundaries.
Yeah.
So you can get a whole conversation going from that one little story, and that's what we find in our measurements. You start to gather these little stories, you look at the significance in them, whether it's the magic in them or the significance in them, and get people talking and thinking, and then people get into learning mode then, because they start sharing stories, they start reflecting on the stories, what's going on in the stories, and they start to change their thinking and practice, but they're not being trained in outcome-focused practice. They're sort of learning through talking and thinking together about stories, isn't it? You got the gist. It's really simple. So we're going to get you to do a bit of story gathering in a minute, if that's okay. So supporting people, and this is the other thing, people don't just share willy-nilly, you can't just ask people to tell me your experiences and expect people to share them, because that's the other thing. So people don't always share. And what Ben said in his work, he finds that patients in particular, people don't like to complain. And service users who are reliant on others are even less prone to complain. I had a classic story of an older person I met once in a care home, and she said, when I came here, I told them that I like baked potatoes. And they always give me these baked potatoes, but I've gone off them actually. But I haven't got I don't like to tell them because they mean well. But she hadn't told them, and they were given her baked potatoes. And it's not because they're horrible staff, they're kind staff, but she just didn't feel, she didn't want to upset them really. So this is really important. We really need emotional sensitivity to ensure psychological safety. So if you're getting people to share their magic, tragic moments, you've got to create the right environment. It's not like getting people to fill in a survey. If we're asking people to share their stories, that's personal, and always sharing the personal, always to some degree makes us vulnerable, doesn't it? Because we're sort of revealing ourselves really, and what matters to us, and that's sometimes easy, and sometimes that's quite hard, really, isn't it? So just a quick glitch. This is how best to get the views. I love this little clip from Faulty Towers. If that's all right, I'll stop sharing on. I've got to put the sound back on. Yeah.
part of the world, isn't it? All those beautiful trees and fields and variety of birds.
Yes, that's true.
And you can just go there and get away from it all, away from the helter-skelter of modern life, because we all do need our solitude, don't we?
Yes, we do.
I mean, nowadays it's not easy to find the time to, I don't know, enjoy life, because there's always things to do. It's all so hectic, isn't it? All of us just rushing around, letting things get on top of us. And quite honestly, what's the point?
Have you finished?
Yes.
Thank you, my wife.
I think those prawns might be a bit off.
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, they do taste rather funny.
Well, no one else has complained.
Well, I really do think they're off.
But you've eaten half of them.
Well, I didn't notice at the start.
You didn't notice at the start.
No, well, it was a sauce. I wasn't sure.
So you ate half to make sure?
My wife thinks they're off.
Well, what about, do you want another first course?
No, thank you.
You're sure?
No, really, I'll just have the mains.
Well, we'll cancel it.
Cancelled? Oh, deducted from the bill. Is that what you mean?
As it's inedible.
Well, only half of it's inedible, apparently.
Well, deduct half now. And if my wife brings the other half up during the night, we'll claim the balance in the morning. All right, please.
Well, 3 we know have passed on this year, all in their early 60s. So I've cut out butter, and I tell you what else I do.
Yes, thank you.
No, really, it's all right. But it's all bristles. No, honestly. Oh, there's a nice bit, see? Oh, Doris, it's awful. Oh, no, dear, it's not as bad as that. I've had worse. I don't know how they get away with it.
Everything all right?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Everything to your satisfaction? Yes.
It's a great little clip, isn't it? Yeah. Because people don't always share what they really think, do they? And in mental health services, and it'll be the same as with working with older people. To get that environment right where people can genuinely and truly share their experiences, it takes some creating that right environment. So one of the things we found, a little tool we found helpful, rather than put people on the spot, is to use pictures or emotion cards. I'm sure you probably use these anyway, but we found them really helpful. So rather than sort of just put people on the spot, it's a bit like kids. You can work with kids through puppets, because they'll talk to the puppet much happier than they'd rather talk to you or something. It's that sort of way of thinking, really. So I'll share them now. So this is ways of gathering magic and tragic moments. And this is somewhere we did in Monmouthshire. They were creating an integrated health and social care and community hub. And we just put a pile of these emotion cards on a table. Can you pick an emotion, you pick a picture? Can you tell us a story about your experience of health and social care? And straight away, instead of just being put on the spot, people had the creative fun of rummaging through cards and picking emotions. So somebody pick annoyed, you see. They say annoyed, oh, that's interesting. What? Tell us why you got annoyed. And then the story would come out, and they're talking to the card, really. You're talking about the card, which creates a bit of space between you and the person, really. So we found them really helpful. Like I'll send Jim and Lily, and I can send a set of these cards. You can print them off, but they're really helpful. Because sometimes we find these are the cards. So included, thankful, terrified, confused, helping. You can see they're very simple, but they're just these little prompts to help people to share their stories of experience, really. And then some people find emotions too raw, to pick on. So we found pictures with metaphorical sort of meaning. They're often even easier for people, really. So people might pick a maze there, and you say, "Oh, you picked a maze. Tell us why you picked a maze." And you can imagine the sort of stories that come out of that. So these picture cards, I've got a set, and I carry them everywhere because they're just really good for helping people. You just we did it at a care home event in Bridgend, and they had an open day, like a fete and everything. We just scattered all these pictures on the table and said, pick a picture that says something about living here, working here, or visiting here. So it was open to family, residents and staff. and they'd pick cards, and then they'd share with one another why they'd picked the picture, and then we'd start dialogue around, well, that's interesting, and you get these rich conversations that come out of these story analysis, really, and it's just really lovely. It's very simple. What I'd like to do is, again, to put it into pairs and have a think about a magic or tragic moment from your experience, really. If you're a practitioner, it might be from work, or it could be personal, I don't know, but it's only something you're happy to share, and you don't have to share anything, but I thought it'd be quite nice just to see whether you could, what it feels like to ask each other, have you got a magic or tragic moment from your experiences? Obviously, bearing in mind, some people have very tragic moments and they don't want to share those straight away, but something, for this workshop, really, just something small that you'd be happy to share. Yeah, is that okay? So I've got in the chat, there's a Padlet. If you want to look at this Padlet link, I'll put in the chat. On the Padlet, you'll see a set of, if you go into that Padlet, you'll see there's 3 stories, which we're going to look at later, but you'll see emotion cards and picture cards, and you might want to have a look at that first and pick a picture, and then in pairs, share a magic or tragic moment with one another.
How long do you want to give for that, Nick?
What do you think? It's 5 minutes. It's only quick, so you don't want to sort of, just 5 minutes, I think, if that's all right. Just to say a couple of minutes each way. Just something you can share, a little story with one another about something that made you feel good or something that made you feel bad in work or life, really. It'll be confidential.
Okay, the rooms are open now for people.
Okay. Come back.
And there'll be a minute warning. Yeah. You all right, Brian? You okay, Liz?
I'm waiting on link to breakout room.
Sean, hold on now. Oh, you're unassigned, and so is Carmel. So I'm going to put you into room 3, Sean.
Perfect.
And hi, Carmel. I'm going to put you into room 2.
Thank you.
Gently put you into room 2, Carmel. Gently. And Laura, are you still unassigned?
Hi Jim, how are you?
Sorry, John, I didn't know I was on mute there. Are you unassigned?
No, I went in the room and there was no one there.
Go away. How is that now? Hold on now and see if I can.
Unless I done something wrong, Jim. Sorry.
Room 3 now. Hold on.
Room 7, I think it was.
Room 4. Hold on now. And you know something? Room's 9. Hold on now. There's 9 rooms in it. Do you think I can see all of them? Fuck's sake. You want to be?
That's a word, Jim. No panic whenever you buy.
I'll get it now. Here we go. Here we go. Room 7. John, you're on your own. So I'm going to move you to move to room 3.
On the ball. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, John. Sorry that took so fucking long.
No sign of the invite coming up, Jim, just to let you know.
Why did that do that now? Because that's... Oh, no. Room 7, move to. I'm going to move you to room 5 then.
There we
Did
go.
the invite
Thanks,
come up?
Jim.
Sorry, John.
No problem. Thanks, Jim.
No bother. Carmel,
Yeah,
you
Jim, I
still...
got knocked out.
Oh, hold on now. What room were you in, Carmel?
3, I think.
I'm going to put you back in there now.
No worries.
There's 4. You okay, Aisling? Did you get kicked out early or?
No, we had just been jabbering away there and we said, oh, we better go back.
Or the equivalent, the Zoom equivalent of out for a fag, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
How was that for you?
Very good, very interesting. Yeah. We were just saying, I love this stuff. I love coming to these things, but sometimes I tend to end up quite frustrated because there's so little resources within the system to allow for all of the good practice. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, so we're hoping to kind of, hopefully to embed this within each service and in each county so that we have kind
Yeah.
of story going on and system learning events. I think Orla is the big thing for us. Like what's the,
Yes.
what are we hearing and what are we saying and what meaning do people get from that? And I think having a story panel in each county would be really good.
Yeah,
You
I
know, 'cause
think
that's
so
something that
too.
people do, you know. Yeah, like this would be really interesting in the injection facility, wouldn't it?
Yes, very, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully with Brian, we shared some lovely stories, Brian. It was great. Yeah. So I'm sure you've all shared stories really, but it's just, again, it's just, and there's always, it's not what, you share your magic moment and your tragic moment, but it's what makes it magic, what makes it tragic. It's when you drill down into the significance of the stories that's the really important thing. And that's what we're going to start to look at after the break, if that's okay. So I'm conscious of time, so because we definitely want to try and finish at 4. So should we have, how long do you want for a break? 5 minutes? Does that mean 5 minutes or do you want 10? What do you think, Jim?
I think if people are smoking, maybe it's an average between 8 to 10 minutes for a good fag, I think. So,
Oh, let's have 8.
it was
Let's have 8. Come back at
8
quarter
Five will
past.
do, Jim. 5 will do.
Let's go for
that
8.
be
We'll
fine,
go for
but-
quarter past.
Yeah.
We'll go for quarter past. Come back at 3:15.
Lovely. Thanks, Nick.
Right.
Quick fag, Pauline.
Huh?
Quick fag.
It was definitely. Quick fag and turn on the oven for the dinner.
Mhm. Are we okay for pace, you think, Jim?
Are we okay for?
Pace, we're sort of tripping along. So.
No, it's nice. It's really nice. Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, so
Jim,
the last one.
Jim, it's Suzanne. I'm going to be back in 3 minutes. I just have to reply to an email. I'm covering another post, so I'm kind of a little bit caught today. And can I just check as well? Are we finishing at 4 o'clock, Nick? It's really good.
I'm aiming to finish at 4. That's it.
4.
So just I'll trip
Great.
through a little bit about how we talk and think together about stories, and then going to do a story exercise where I'll give you 3 stories and put you in
Brilliant.
small groups and get you to.
That's great. That's terrific.
We can start the slides. Yeah, it's the more the talking that you can come back, and when you come back, you'll be able to get involved in the talking groups. Yeah.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Okay, so should we press on?
Yeah.
Grand. Let's go back to. So how do we, so we've covered now gathering stories, and I shared a most sequence change story, which is one particular format, and then we did a bit more around the magic tragic moment stories. But what we wanted to focus on for the last part of the workshop is learning from stories through dialogue learning, really. And so it's the quality of the conversation. So it's not learning by telling, it's how we explore the stories through talking and thinking together. So I love this little cartoon of Snoopy and Woodstock. I love our talks. And you can see Woodstock's chattering away and Snoopy's not so impressed, is he? And we've all been in meetings like that, really, where sometimes there's supposed to be a conversation, but it's a bit one-sided. And when we did this research with Joseph Rowntree, we asked people about their experiences of talking and thinking together in groups. So here's some of the quotes. We're either told off or told what to do. This was a care home manager about the conversations with the inspectorate. We used to talk with our managers. Now we have policy briefings. These are frontline care workers where it was an organisation where they'd introduced an improvement team, which meant well, but of course the staff stopped. They went and told the staff what they were doing, which rubbed them up the wrong way. We have lots of meetings, but we don't meet in the real sense of the word. That was a social work team manager. And this classic one, in the multidisciplinary team, I said, I've spoken with the OT and we think, but the nurse responded by saying, well, I've spoken with the consultant and he thinks. So it's top trumps decision making, so it's when you're in a meeting and different people's voices dominate and it's not healthy. So again, these educational academics we worked with at Cambridge said, if you really want people to learn, you've got to create an environment where everybody's heard and can say what they think and feel, really, and have an opportunity to do that. So a lot of our deep methods are around how do we get people to talk and think well together. And they say there are 3 ways people talk and think together. And it's really important to understand these. Whenever we do any of our deep work, we always go through these with people. There's disputational talk, which is like the House of Commons. I'm right, you're wrong. Brexit's brilliant. No, it isn't. Donald Trump's fantastic. I think he's a whatever. So it's where people argue and fall out. And basically, nobody learns in disputational talk. Cumulative talk is more subtle. That's where you're in a meeting and you're all nodding and all are saying something. Oh, very good, Orla. And then you walk out and say, what was Orla on about? It's the sort of you mutter, those meetings when you mutter when you come out of them. And there are common reasons why people don't say what they think when you've got them in a group. Firstly, you get introverts and extroverts, and introverts don't always get a look in. And not because extroverts are horrible, but they just fill the silence with their voice. And then there's also the imposter syndrome. A lot of people, most people actually have the imposter syndrome. So they're always a bit worried about saying what they really think because they think they might look silly. Then there's the, you might get it in the neck syndrome. Why did you say that in front of social services? So this is where people don't say because they think they might get told off. And then the last thing is this sort of British thing is like, that we don't like upsetting people. So don't like to offend people, so I won't. Pauline's such a nice person. I didn't want to disagree with her, so people don't say. But again, they're saying nobody learns in cumulative talk. So what they say is, if you want people to learn from stories, you've got to do exploratory talk. And there's some ground rules for that, and you can link it up, and I'll send links, but it's based at the Oracy work in Cambridge University. They're the people who sort of really into it. And they say in exploratory talk, you can say anything you like, but you've got to give a reason. So you can say the moon's made out of cheese, but you can't just say that. You've got to say the moon's made out of, I think the moon's made out of cheese, because I saw a film about a man and a dog, and they built a rocket and they took crackers up to the moon, and they cut off these cones of cheese. I saw it, yeah. So I've given you a reason, and you can't say, well, that's rubbish, that's stupid. Of course, the moon's not, you've got to engage with me in a way that either agrees with me or disagrees with me, but you've got to give a reason. So you might say, I agree with you, Nick, because I saw that film and I saw a similar one, and they were talking about Wensleydale cheese. So I think you'll find the moon's made out of Wensleydale cheese, not just any old cheese. But then somebody else might say, well, actually, guys, I want to disagree with you because I saw both those films, and I think that they're not documentaries. They're animated cartoons by Nick Park, and it's called A Grand Day Out. And so it's a silly example, but that's the spirit of people are encouraged to disagree and agree. And when somebody spoke, so say Jim's saying something, when Jim's finished, if I want to say anything, I'll put my hand up, and Jim will look around, and there might be 3 people, and Jim will pick the next person to speak. And when that person who speaks has to then make a connection with what Jim said. So if Jim's talking about cars and things, and then I'm not really listening to Jim, I just want to talk about buses or something. So the minute Jim finishes, I just want to butt in about buses. You can't do that. You say, I've got to say, Jim, that's interesting about cars. I want to agree with you because I disagree with you. Or Jim, I've got an example that illustrates what you've said. Or Jim, I've got an example that says the opposite, I think, to what you've just said. Can you got the gist of it? So it's these simple but not simplistic ground rules for exploratory talk that's so helpful and really important in co-production and in interprofessional working, because obviously in co-production you get power imbalances, and in interprofessional working you get power imbalances. And the metaphor they use is this Indian metaphor of 6 blind people around an elephant. That everybody, if we can see everybody's perspective, we'll see the elephant in the room. So person holding the tusk says it's a spear, person holding the leg says no, it's not a spear, it's a pole, and the person holding the tail says rubbish, it's a rope. But if they can see each other's perspectives, they'll see the elephant in the room. So that's very much the spirit of exploratory talk, and all of our storytelling methods home in on that exploratory talk way of talking, and make sure that people, before they engage in conversation, you've gone through those 3 ways of talking, and you really set the scene so people feel empowered to say, yeah, I might be the gardener in this care home, but my view matters, and I want to tell you what I think about it, and this is why. And people aren't going to ridicule me. They might disagree with me, but they're going to respect me. So it's just basic ground rules, really, for talking. And one of the guys we've been working with is in University College London, Rupert Hyam. He says about dialogue, he says it's responding to others because they really matter, and building dispositions to seek out value and learn from the differences between us. So he sees talking as a caring activity. It's not just a communication thing. If we deeply care about people, we value them and respect them, even if they're coming from a million miles away from where we're coming from. As a fellow human being, we respect them. So it's this caring approach to talking that's so important. So ground rules, everyone's encouraged to contribute. People give reasons for their thinking. Everyone listens actively. Different perspectives are welcomed. Disagreements are valued and explored. People can pose questions to the group. Share relevant knowledge. Contributions build on what's gone before. And the last person speaking picks the next person to speak. You can't just butt in. So one of the lines we say is, if you talk too much in exploratory talk, you'll only ever get picked once. So it's a nice way of putting a break on people, because once somebody, and you use a bit of humor. So that's the ground rules. And one of the things we found a really useful and a really simple exercise, and I'd really encourage anyone to have a go at this, is gather magic moments. It's part of appreciative inquiry, really, in a service or an organisation. What are the good things? What are the little stories, those little micro stories? And Swansea Council gathered lots of magic moments from staff about what they felt good about their work. And then we chew over them like chocolates using exploratory talk. So basically, we gather the stories, and then we put the little story on the PowerPoint slide on the one side. Then we do an image that looks like the story on the other side, and then each little story has a snappy title. So there looks like a dementia or designer label, and it's got Vivienne Westwood, and it's a story there. That's a little story about somebody who with advanced dementia who's non-communicative, but used to be a seamstress for Vivienne Westwood, and how they done some life story work and how they can connect with her. So you can see the thing, and we gather the stories, we present them well, and we explore them individually. We'd say, let's explore what's magic about that. Okay, why is it a magic? What makes it a magic moment? Or what makes it a tragic moment? And then we place them all over the floor and get people to say, okay, we've just listened to 10 stories there. Which one's the most magic moment? And Jim might go to one story and Pauline will go to another. And we're off then, because Jim will say, well, Jim, why do you think that's the most magic? And Jim will say, I think it's the most magic because. And Pauline will say, well, actually, I disagree with Jim because I think this is more magic because this is, you got the gist. It's really simple, but you just invite people to encourage and stretch one another's thinking, and you do the same with Most Significant Change, which is what we're going to do for the last half hour of the workshop. And then once you've had your exploration of the stories, we sit everyone back in a circle and say, okay, so what? And we give everybody a last word opportunity. You go round the circle and say, what are the implications? We've explored these stories, we've learned from them, but what needs to be done? What do we need to do? So you can start to identify areas for action. And I can send some of these magic moment booklets to you or links to them, but we've done them in all sorts of different services. So, and what I wanted to close on and really wanted to focus on a bit is the Most Significant Change story method. And this is a particular magic tragic moments is from experience-based co-design. It's really simple, just experience. And that's really important in some services. I mean, I know when you're working with older people with high support needs, you're not looking at dramatic changes in their lives in a care home, but you want them to have positive experiences. So you're focusing on experience in a sort of more, and not undervaluing it as a static service where you're just providing good quality care and support. Then experience is important, but some services, and particularly if you're working with drug and alcohol, you've got a rehab sort of focus or something where getting people to get back a sense of self and self-worth and identity. So where you're focused on change, then Most Significant Change is perhaps a more effective method. And we've used it in mental health recovery, and I know in Recovery Cymru and drug and alcohol stuff, they've been using Most Significant Change because they found it really powerful storytelling method. But basically it follows 3 stages, Most Significant Change. You gather your stories, like the one we had from Gemma earlier, the one who, the to be continued story. So we gather those stories, and then you can have a researcher sat in a cupboard, and you can give all the stories to the researcher and say, thematically analyze those, please. And they can do that, and they can come up with the themes, and that's one strand of MSc. But MSc doesn't stop there. What it does is it's learning focused approach to evaluation. So what you do is you gather a selection of the stories. Say there were 30 stories gathered. You might gather 8 of them and carefully gather them so they're representative of all the sort of the responses you've got. And then you give them to a story selection panel. And this is usually made up of senior managers, influencers, decision makers, key stakeholders, but also can involve people from the front line as well. So it's but you basically have this story selection panel, and they have to learn from the stories, and I'll explain how they do it. So basically this group of people learn from this selection of stories, and then they have to then provide feedback. They say, this is what we've learned from the stories, and this is what we're going to do about it, or this is what needs to be done. So it's very much a sort of gather stories, learn from them, and then feedback what you think needs to happen as a result. So it's really simple, but it has 4 benefits. It is an evaluation methodology. What we found is it has multiple benefits, this methodology, and it can go, if anybody's interested, we run 3-hour training on it. So we can, if anybody wanted to join the training, we can do that. But the first thing is, and I put it in inverted commas because it's not therapy, obviously, but it can be therapeutic, because instead of shoving a well-being scale in front of somebody's nose or an outcome star, you invite them to share their story. And whether it's a good story or a sad story, the fact that they've been invited to share their story is a benefit. There's joy in the journey, so to speak. So when we were working with the parents who had the kids removed, the most important part of the MSc to them was being able to share their story. The magic and the what's changed for them as a result of the work they've been doing. So it can be therapeutic. It's not just an evaluation tool. It does capture complex change outcomes. You can see in the life of Gemma, couldn't you? You can see there's made a significant difference to her, but it's quite a complex thing going on, and it captures that. It also supports collective learning, because a bit like the magic moments, we get everybody talking and thinking together about the stories. And lastly, it builds relationships and mutual understanding, and that's through the story selection process, which I'll go on to in a minute. So it's not only about learning from the stories, it's about learning from each other and about each other, and getting to connect with one another and build relationships and mutual understanding. So that's a sort of plug for MSc. So one of the things it does, when you've gathered a set of stories, you take them to this panel, and the panel are given this task. So they're given, and you'll be given this task in a minute now, and it's like, okay, we've got 6 to 8 stories. It doesn't need to be many. You'd be amazed how people can make sense of and get a conversation going around just a handful of stories. They're given this task of which is the most significant story. And see, Naomi might say, well, I think this is the most significant story because, and Naomi will say why. And then John might say, well, actually, Naomi, I disagree with you. I think this is a more significant story, and because of this reason. And so in that process, we're learning from the stories, but we're also learning about Naomi and John, really, because we're saying Naomi's saying this is something that I think is really significant. So we're learning about each other. And so if John's working with Naomi, then he knows that perhaps if he takes into interest what Naomi's interested in, it might help in the co-production process, or have you got the gist of it? There's an academic in Oxford University called Anne Edwards, and she calls it common knowledge. And she says it's often missing in big groups where we don't really understand where other people are coming from. And that's why we get frustrated, because you're all talking about outcomes, but they mean different things to different people. So exploring this, why because again, sorry, I'm picking on you, Naomi, but you might say, well, I think this is most significant because it's outcome focused. And then Jim will say, well, actually, I'm not sure what you mean by outcomes. And Naomi will say, well, I think that's. And Jim will say, well, actually, I don't think that's an outcome. I think that's an output, whatever. But anyway, you get into, you just allow this. Can you see the process? So we're, as well as learning from the stories, we're learning from and about each other. And that's really helpful well, it's essential in co-production, really, because otherwise things can so easily go pear-shaped. Have you got the gist? It's really, it is simple. And you can do different ways of doing it. You can put the stories on the floor. You can do it online as well, but you can put the stories on the floor and get people to stand by stories. A lovely example I remember, it was Neathport Talbot, and we had the stories placed around the floor. And the Director of Social Services, Andrew Jarrett, he stood by a story. And we had a parent who stood on a different story, and we had to listen to Andrew. And Andrew said why he chose this story. And then the parent showed why she had chosen this other story, and it was really interesting. Andrew was listening, and you could see pennies dropped for Andrew. He said, "I'd not seen that before." And he said, "So, because what you do is once you've had this dialogue around which ones people have chosen, you let people change their mind. They can move to a different story." So Andrew walked from the story he was on, and he went and stood by the story that this parent was on. And he said, "I think you're right. I think that is more significant than what I noticed in this story." So, and that was really symbolic and really important it's quite moving to be a part of, really. So it tenderizes the sort of environment, if that makes sense. Any questions or comments? Is it? It's often saying the obvious thing. Emma, have you got? Did you want to say?
Yeah, I was just the stories themselves are from individuals explaining or telling a story about their most significant change.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all
individuals. It can be an organisation. It can be organisational changes. It can be any change. Again, in the training, it could be changes in you. It can be changes in other people. It can be changes in systems. It can be changes in communities. So it depends on your context, but it's what's changed. So it could be your community development project, and you say, okay, what good or bad changes have come about as a result of your involvement in the community development project? And somebody might say, well, I've made friends. I actually know where the doctor's surgery is now, and I never knew before. I don't know. You just get all these different changes.
And the purpose then of us in the room evaluating the stories.
Yeah, that's it. It's evaluating, but so they're evaluating the stories collectively rather than having a researcher sat in the cupboard. Because again, my experience when I've been in planning, in a busy local authority, you get an evaluation in, you get the expert independent evaluator, they come in, they do something, they create this big report, which hardly anybody ever reads because everybody's too busy to read it. And people haven't engaged in the evaluation process, and then the report is a set of recommendations. They don't always get implemented. But if you make it a participatory process evaluation, people are changed by the thing. Even if they walk away, like Andrew Jarrod is a different person after he's been in a story selection panel with parents. He thinks differently. So he's
because
been
he was
involved
part
in
of that process. Yeah.
part of the process. So it is evaluation, but it's also it makes the evaluation personal. They did a preventions panel in West Wales, in Pembrokeshire, and they had the health board and social services and the national park, Pembrokeshire Coast National Park, and everything. And they get talking about stories. And Jonathan Griffiths, who's the director of social services, started to cry. He shed a tear because he was really moved by one particular story. And you could see people going, "Nuts! I've never seen Jonathan cry before," but it was really good to see Jonathan cry, and it was because it made the connections, so it made much better because they could empathise, and again, it's building relationships. So when it comes to making joint decisions, you just do it better when you've got meaningful relationships. I remember Carrie McCluskey, who does knife crime reduction in Glasgow, she said, "I don't form partnerships with organisations, I form relationships with people." And that's such a profound statement, really. But that's part of this process, really. And it's the same with the parents and the social workers, because we found they have a different kind of relationship. Which I'd say is an I-thou relationship rather than an I-it relationship. It's really you connect on a meaningful level with another human being. You might disagree with them, but you know where they're coming from, and you can. Am I making it?
No, great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so what I thought we'd do for the last bit is give you a task, if that's right, and go into small groups. Is that okay? I'll just do a quick slide and then we'll go into the exercise. Okay. So the aim of the selection panel is to learn from the stories, which is the obvious thing, but it's to learn about each other and develop Andrew Edwards calls common knowledge, what matters to people. Recognise and value different perspectives, question and challenge each other in respectful and constructive ways, build a shared and rich understanding of what's significant. Because people say, "Oh, that's a lovely story." I think, no, we're not interested in whether it's a lovely story. What's significant in the story? It's this word significant. And again, some people like to box that in and define it in advance, say, well, we're only interested in relationships. So that's what we're going to, but most people keep it open to the group to decide what's significant. So Emma, you might come up with something that you say is uniquely to you, but you say, well, that's significant to me. And then you get the shared semantics, understanding of words, and you work towards consensus, and you explore the implications. I'll run through this, but basically, this is just the way structure panels, but I could do this on another time. I'd rather get you talking, really. It's the idea that you read out a story, explore each story in turn, spread the stories around, and then basically get people to decide which they think is the most significant story. Listen to what people are saying, give them a chance to move around, and then sit back down and say, "So what?" So that's that. And the feedback report follows a particular format. So it's good, and it doesn't need to be a massive, thick report. It should be a little short one, ideally 1 or 2 sides of A4, really. This is the date of the panel. Here's the panel participants. Some people put a picture. There's a photo. This is the people who met. They looked at these stories. The story the panel selected as being the most significant and why they chose it. So you have that, and it's appendix to the story at the back with permission. What the panel learned from exploring all of the stories, and then what the panel intends to do in response to what was learned. So again, it's obvious stuff, really. This and they're revealing themselves. So when they say we chose the Zoom not Doom story because of X, Y, and Z, people at the front line say, "Oh, so that's what makes the senior managers tick." I see they've told us why they've chosen that story. So that's it. So what we're going to do, I don't know how this will work. I think we've got about 20 minutes or so. I've got 3 little most significant change stories, and they're from a lovely project in southeast Wales. and it's a stroke and head injury rehabilitation service. Stroke and head injury rehab used to take place in clinics, but what they've done in Abergavenny and Gwent, they've taken it out into the community. So they've co-produced it with patients or survivors and unpaid carers, and they're working with local communities and leisure centres, and so they've taken everything out of the hospital and into the community, and they've set up all sorts of things like a peer support group for stroke survivors, or a learning from learning about brain injury group, and they call them like spaghetti meatballs. There's a whole range of things in a bowl of spaghetti, and you can choose where you go. It's a recovery college model, but applied to stroke and head injury rehab, really. And it's co-produced. So, and they came to us and they said, all of our clinical measures don't capture what we're doing, really, because people are getting version 2 of themselves. They're coming back and they're thriving, but then it doesn't really fit an Edinburgh well-being scale or whatever. The only way to capture this is in their stories. So these are 3 little stories, and what I'd like you to do in the last 20 minutes in your small groups, I'll put the Padlet link in a minute, is get somebody in your group to read the first story and then have a bit of a chat about it. And say what's significant in the story. If you were the managers, imagine you're in the little panel, you're the senior managers for a stroke and head injury rehab, and you want to know what's going on. What's significant in that story? If you can, hopefully have time, repeat for the other 2 stories. And then the very last part of the workshop is see if you can decide as a group which is the most significant story and why. You might not, but try your best to argue with each other to say which is significant. Is that okay? So read the story, explore it a little bit. What's significant in that story? What's it telling us about stroke and head injury rehab? So one of the stories is about a policeman who had a stroke and lost his sense of identity and everything, really, but ended up setting up a breakfast club, which has transformed his life. Another is a mother who was despairing over her son, really, who had a serious car head injury, and they were not getting on at all, really, and their relationship's been restored. And the other is a practitioner who sort of stepped out of the norm and worked with leisure services to set up a sort of a rehab thing in the leisure centre, and the leisure centre staff were scared stiff of working with people with stroke, you see, because they thought it might kill them. So it's just have a look at these 3 stories. What's significant in the stories, and which is the most significant? Is that okay? And we've got 20 minutes for that.
Yeah. Is it 2? You've already assigned the rooms. I've just opened the rooms there now, Nick. Yeah.
Can people see the thing before you open the rooms? Now let me just get the Padlet. Hang on. I'll copy. So it's the same Padlet that had the emotion and image cards, where you'll see the Brain Fog Breakfast Club. Collaboration is key, and stuck on the tracks. So that's it. And then we'll come back forward just to close and see how you got on, really, and then let everybody go home. I'll just put that. Paste and not pairs this time. Smaller groups of say 4 or 5.
I'll have to recreate the rooms. I think some have only 2. I think.
Yeah, so if you did 5 rooms, Jim, that would probably work. 5 rooms, about 4. There's 22 participants. So recreate, you can't you? And just recreate.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And create 5 rooms. And there's the stories for you.
Okay.
And have a bash.
Recreate.
But if you get bored and want to
rooms
do something else, do feel free.
The room should be open there, and I give everyone a minute warning like the last time. At the end. Are you assigned a room, Laura?
Jim, I have to run. I know I'm so sorry I have to go to another call, but thank you so much to Nick and colleagues. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
No problem at all.
Thanks,
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Thank you.
Great, bye. Well, that's it, really. How'd you pick? I mean, I had a lovely conversation with Sean, Carmel, and Jackie. It was lovely and straight into. We didn't decide on which story was the most significant, but we were straight away homing in on some really important features. What did other people think? Carmel, Sean, Jackie, do you want to share anything about the conversation? Or
well, I think for me, anyways, yeah, I'd be picking story 3 more for familiarities, and I suppose more so the way I can really relate to it in a number of different ways.
Yeah. That was key. It was pulling in our stories as well, because one story triggers another. I say story section panels then allow time for those stories to be shared as well, so you can see they become really meaningful, rich conversations. Anybody else from go? I'm conscious it's 4:01, so we don't. I do like to.
It's funny that Carmel's saying story 3, because if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with story 1.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he kind of, with him becoming the peer mentor and stuff, it means the groups are going to be kind of self-supporting.
Yeah.
And that'll also lead to other training. So then they could bring families in and go off that as well. So.
Very good. Yeah. Laura.
I think personally, I was instantly more the emotive side of story 3, but which is more maybe learning for how I take stuff in. But a nice kind of framing from the group was like that felt more like an individual significance rather than a collective. So is it more about kind of what impacts, and who's to say, but I suppose the story 2 felt like it impacted the largest collective. But
Yeah, that's it.
All 3 of them felt like a stigma impact as well, which I thought was nice throughout. I don't think any of them said that, but that's what I heard.
Yeah. So it's only like in 15 minutes you've been able to really connect with the stories and get to the heart of them, really. I don't know. Anybody else wants to, or should we close, Jim? But if anybody wants to know more or links up with people who've used Most Significant Change, I've got a little film that we made. We had an event in the Botanic Gardens in March, and people who are using MSc got together and they've put a little film. It's a nice little film. We had a lovely, sensitive filmmaker. So I'll send that to Jim, and you can share that. But if you want any follow up or
share that week after the training, yeah.
Did I send it, Jim? Have I sent it to you already?
Yeah, we have it. We have it ready to share. We said we'd send it out once today was
great.
Finished.
Great. Well, lovely. I've really enjoyed spending time with you. It's lovely. Thank you very much.